Hello and welcome to The Checkout. I'm your host, Halie LeSavage, one of the writers at Retail Brew. In today's installment of our monthly discussion series, we're unpacking a practice that's getting a lot of buzz in the retail industry these days, and that something is sustainability. There are hundreds of so-called sustainable brands out there, and even more retailers that have recently made flashy commitments to the environment, particularly tied to Earth Day a couple of weeks ago. But when no two companies are making the exact same policy commitments or changes to their products, it's hard for consumers and the industry at large to understand what's really making an impact. So today we're going to unpack how two retailers define their sustainable practices and which sustainability methods will shape the future of retail post-pandemic, among other topics in this area. I'm so excited to welcome our two panelists, Karla Gallardo, the co-founder and CEO of Cuyana, and Saskia van Gendt, the head of sustainability at Rothy's. Karla and Saskia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. I'm so excited to dig into this, and I know we only have 30 minutes, so we'll see what we can get through. But for starters, I want to kind of come to the fundamentals of each of your businesses. You know, a lot of the confusion that happens in sustainability stems from the fact that nobody goes about it quite the same way. So starting with Karla and then going to Saskia, I'd like to hear how each of your brands define sustainability and how you landed on the set of practices that go into that definition for each of your businesses. So Karla, you can kick us off.
Yeah, of course. So we have a very focused philosophy when it comes to sustainability, and that it is to keep it in your closet and out of landfill. That's the sentence we use often, and it's a three-pronged approach really that we are taking to really help our customers do that. The first one is we produce responsibly. And that encompasses everything from the type of materials we use and how sustainable they are to how we produce it, how the cut and sew takes place, how high quality all of that is to create an incredible product. And also includes the fact that our business model focuses on bestsellers, and that allows us to produce responsibly in the sense that we really can forecast our business in a very methodical way. We don't produce new products. The majority of our products are not new every season. And so we've had bestsellers for years and that allows us to really understand their activity in terms of sales throughout the year, and the curves of sales and our predictions are pretty accurate. And so we don't overproduce. The second piece is we allow our customer to maximize wear through our design process. And I'll go into all of that in more detail. But our goal really is for our customers to buy product and wear it very often. Daily is our goal. And lastly, it's extending the life of our product. It's incredible how we many times find it easier to discard a product than mend it, then refresh the leather. And at Cuyana, we are building ways for our customers to know that is, the next possibility when a product starts to show wear and tear. And then when we're done with the product, and we can't ignore that, at some point we are going to feel like we want to part ways with a favorite product. Well, our hope is that product gets a second, third, fourth life. And we have programs enhanced in our business model where our customers can return those products to us, and we will refresh those products and gift them to somebody else for a second or third life, or we will recycle them.
I really appreciate how there's kind of a 360 approach there. So you're thinking about the beginning of the lifespan of a product all the way to the end. So Saskia, at Rothy's, is there a similar approach, or how are you defining the sustainable practices throughout, the scope of Rothy's business?
Yeah, it is really similar. And I loved hearing what Karla said. I think the foundation of Rothy's was built out of the recognition of how much waste was in the traditional footwear industry, and how much manufacturing waste, production waste, and then the product itself not being designed for durability. So referencing the 360 that you mentioned, it starts with the materials that we use, and Rothy's is built on using and transforming recycled materials into durable and timeless bags and footwear. And in addition to using recycled materials, we're using a 3D knitting process, which allows us to virtually eliminate any production waste. We own our own factory, so similar to what Karla was talking about, we're able to really control production to produce on demand based on what the customer wants. So we're not producing a whole season's worth of inventory that ultimately might be wasted. And by owning our own factory, we're able to be very nimble in how we produce and meeting that demand in a really nimble way. And then when it comes to the wear of the product and the durability, we've designed every product to be washable, machine washable, which we know greatly extends the life of the product. And if you drop something on your shoe, you end up in the mud, or you get something on your bag, you can throw it in the machine and it comes out looking like new, which I think is important for the extending the life and the durability of the product. So a fact I love is that if you extend the life of a product just 9 months, then you can reduce waste, water, and carbon footprints by 30%. So that durability component is a really essential part of that 360 view. And then looking at end-of-wear solutions, Rothy's is excited to be committed to circularity, and hopefully we'll get into a little bit more details of that. But our ultimate goal is to close the loop by creating end-of-wear solutions and recycling options for the customer, which is what we're embarking on this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am really interested in circularity, and we'll come back to that or circle back in a couple minutes. But I want to focus for just a second on the evolution of your approach to sustainability in the past year specifically. I think there's been a lot of heightened awareness, both among professionals in the retail space as well as the consumer, of overproduction and what happens in the supply chain, given all of the many disruptions that have happened due to COVID. So I'm curious to hear from each of you how, if at all, your approach to sustainability or the definition that you're working with in-house has been altered at all by the disruptions and changes that you've had to work around in the past year. Maybe Karla, I'll have you start with this one. Oh, I think you might be on mute.
Right? I'm glad I got the notice. Our business model, again, we are focused on putting to market best sellers. Our goal is to create these products that customers will love and that won't go out of trend after the season is over. And what that means is that 80% of our products that we make, they are repeat purchase. And meaning we buy them from our suppliers over and over again. When the pandemic hit, we were in hyper growth mode, and we had placed orders with our suppliers. And we don't own our factories like Rothy's does, but we're very strong partners with them, and we have a very, very strong relationship. And so we had placed orders, predicting a large percentage of growth from the previous year. And we knew that those numbers, most likely we were not going to hit them, right? And this is at the very onset of shelter in place. And so because of that business model that I'm talking about, what we did is we worked with the suppliers to be able to split those orders, and not produce everything at once. We still committed to those orders, but because our products don't run out of style, because we are always actually selling them through the years, we were able to work with them so that we basically expanded the timeline of delivery of those products. And neither the factories were in a bad place, nor we were in a place where we had overproduced and we had to liquidate all or figure out how we liquidate that product that would be sitting on shelves for months. We also do produce 20% of our sales come from new product. And we had placed orders for some of those. Good news about our supply chain is that we also, in order to reduce waste, we tried to produce as close as possible to launch date. And so we hadn't made commitments through the entire year yet. We're talking about end of February, beginning of March, but we had placed orders for spring and summer new product. And what we did is, again, working very closely with our factories, we recrafted, we rethought the collection, thinking if our customer is going to be home, what does she want? How do we transform these products to be more, more relevant to her in a world where she will be spending most of her time working from home? So we did do some innovation and changes there so that we could continue to be relevant. And then there were a percentage of products that were just not going to be relevant. We had mini bags. There were things that we knew she wasn't going to use. And again, focusing on our approach, and we are a brand that truly believes in owning fewer, better things. We decided we are not going to put those products to the market. We are not going to sell those products. We're not going to tell her, buy these products. These products aren't relevant to what the world is going through. And so our decision was to still keep those products. We own them. And with our factories, we did not cancel any orders, which is something that did happen in the retail industry. We're very strong partners with them. But we decided to actually put those products to market once she would start going out again. So, and that's a cost that we incurred as a brand, with the goal, again, of always being relevant to her, right? And that's where, we'd rather take the hit as a brand rather than try to push product that really isn't something that she's going to truly love and, again, keep in her closet.
Mm-hmm. And so, Saskia, on your end, what kinds of adjustments or innovations did you have to make in the past year from a sustainable lens? I understand that Rothy's was working on the Open Innovation Coalition for a while and open sourcing products to make masks sustainably. But if you could give our audience some context on how you've evolved in the past year, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think it was a true test of the resilience of our supply chain and really proved out many components of our business model. Thinking about owning our own factory, we had that resilience built into how we were producing, and making sure that we were producing on demand allowed us to really control production based on the demand that we were seeing in real time, which was a big benefit to not holding on and producing a lot of excess inventory. So that was a main advantage. And I think the other thing that we saw is the benefit of the ability to, on a very quick basis, prototype and produce different products. So you mentioned our work with the Open Innovation Coalition. We were open sourcing and working across multiple brands to collaborate and provide solutions to COVID shortages around masks and other kinds of PPE. And we also started producing a mask very rapidly, prototyping a design and using our 3D knitting to produce a mask in our factory. At one point, we had allocated about a third of our production time to producing masks. So that agility proved itself out. I think the other thing that we saw is we have a very allegiant and devoted community of nurses, and people really appreciated that our products are washable. And that became really important in COVID when you were out and about. You could throw your bag or your shoes in the wash and make sure that they were clean on the outset. So absolutely, there was a test of resilience, and I think the owning of our own factory and the durability and washability of the product really helped us persevere. The other thing that I really appreciated was the chance to kind of step back, reflect on what we wanted to do as an organization, be very mindful about what we wanted to do moving forward. And that gave me to kind of the time to elevate above and kind of look at what we wanted to do over the next three years, and ultimately led to the circularity goals and commitments that we recently announced. So on a personal note, I appreciated a bit of the extra time, not traveling, not necessarily being in a lot of in-person meetings, that chance to take a step back, reflect on what COVID had taught us, and be more mindful in our approach over the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's been, a lot of steps back across the industry. And I think one thing that I've noticed is a conversation about how much should even be produced by retailers to begin with. Or I get a lot of pitches at my desk about new sustainable brands. And sometimes I wonder, well, isn't the most sustainable thing to kind of innovate with what we already have rather than continuing to add more and more things into the market? So I'd love to hear, what the two of you think about the idea that the best way to be sustainable is to, drastically cut down on production of new products or kind of rethinking, total inventory here. It sounds like the two of your brands are keeping a very close eye on consumer demand and, not overproducing. But I'm wondering what you think of that approach, for the retail industry writ large. Maybe Saskia, you can kick us off with this one.
Yeah, I think from a sustainability standpoint, it absolutely makes sense to focus on fewer, more high quality products that are designed to last. And the conversation around capsule wardrobes was already emerging, but I think the customer has become a lot more self-aware, conscientious about her purchasing or his or her purchasing habits over the past year. I think a lot of us went through our closets and realized there were a lot of things we weren't wearing. And when we do make purchases now, we're all being much more mindful of what we actually want to be wearing, which I think has a huge environmental benefit. And also there's just a lot more mindfulness brought to the consumption pattern. And from a brand standpoint, and definitely the approach that Rothy's takes is creating a durable product that is timeless and can be worn. And we often say front of closet. We know we have customers that will wear a shoe, carry the bag every day of the week. And that's the kind of product that I think the customer will become even more mindful of and really continue to make those more choiceful purchases. I think the move away from trendiness, fast fashion, which is truly designed for very short seasons and cycles and essentially designed for landfill, is hopefully a thing of the past. And you see a lot of brands revisiting how we can bring durability and quality back into the product to kind of meet that customer demand and the evolution over the past year.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And what I also find fascinating is that there are some folks in the fast fashion space who are also trying to, play with materials innovation or certain things to be part of the sustainability conversation. So, Karla, I'd love your thoughts here. Do you think for, these larger players that there's an answer for or a way for them to get involved in the sustainability conversation? Or what do you think about the kind of tension between, wanting to put new things into the market, but also not wanting to encourage overconsumption?
Yeah, I think it's tough. And look, we're big believers on managing inventory differently. But I think that, on the larger retails, their models it's really challenging to do that based on their models and, how they produce, how they sell, their margins, their targets, and, giving up on potential upside, right? When most products that they put to market are new, how will they do? Well, is this going to be a good seller or not? There's just a lot of question marks when you have that type of business model. But yes, ultimately, right, the goal is for all of us to be more and more sustainable, and even brands like Rothy's and Cuyana, right? We can continue to even be better than what we are. Innovation to take place. For the bigger brands, I mean, you're seeing it, right? They are starting to care. They know that the customer wants more sustainable product. And really there are areas that are easier to start in, right? This kind of like how they produce is embedded in their business model in a stronger way than, for example, the focus is on materials, right? Like they are creating new products every season. They can already start to be better by the type of materials that they choose, by the level of quality, right? So starting there actually ends up making a difference. And it definitely is just the beginning. But, businesses do need to figure out how they adapt to this, because the customer will continue to demand more transparency, better quality. And this trend that we saw, right, of trendiness, of low quality is something that is slowly going away. It's still there, right? Some businesses are still sustaining themselves from that. But change does need to happen through time. And it will be a step-by-step for the larger businesses whose business models aren't set up for this. There's huge opportunity for small businesses, however, and I'll tell you on our end, when I think about how could we be better, right? What are kind of the areas where I wish there was more innovation? materials and circularity on materials is something that I wish the industry was moving faster towards. We are just getting started with recycled cashmere, like trying to source all of these materials, right? And upcycled materials is an area where I think there's huge opportunity there, and where innovation will just make companies like us even better. So for those newcomers to the sustainability world, I really encourage, and I always, suggest the areas to focus on. And I feel like if we start with the materials, like we can actually make a big dent across all retail players. And those materials just aren't widely available. Quality of those materials isn't at the level where it could be. So just more dollars need to go in there to get to a place where we can all have more access to upcycled materials.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to hear that you're thinking about circularity at Cuyana, because as Saskia has alluded to, Rothy's recently announced a commitment to having fully circular production by 2023. So Saskia, can you give us some insight into what it's looking like on your team right now in terms of finding the solutions that will make that really lofty goal possible for your business? And, any takeaways that our audience who might be thinking about this as well can, apply to their journey to trying out circular production?
Yeah, well, for Rothy's, circularity builds on the foundation that we built from day one. So we've already used recycled materials in our products. We're designing for durability. We're using 3D knitting to eliminate waste in manufacturing. So looking again at that 360 full life of a product, we've been building that foundation for many years. So for the next step for us is truly closing the loop by creating end-of-wear recycling options for the customer. And we know the product is durable, and literally hundreds of wear and washes can come from every product. But ultimately, how can we recover the materials from that product so that we can use them, as Karla was saying, in recycled products and once again? And that closing the loop and figuring out recycling solutions is really lacking within our industry, unfortunately. And there are very small kind of one-off recycling solutions, but something that can truly work at scale is something that Rothy's is committing to figure out for our brand and also share that with our industry. So in practical terms, what it looks like is this year we're doing a recycling pilot to take the shoe apart, disassemble it into its main components, figure out how we can recycle each of those main materials. And starting next year, actually recover, in some cases, twice recycled materials, since we're already using a recycled thread, recycling it again and using it in products again. And over the next couple of years, making all of the different components of a recycling system more sophisticated, increasing the scale at which we can disassemble and recover materials and find either recyclers that can help us return those materials into a product that Rothy's can use, or potentially collaborate with other industries so we can find repurposed rubber, for example, in other industries. So there's tons of opportunity there. And one thing I'm really excited about is that we brought on a sustainability council beginning in March that will really help us figure out these circularity solutions for Rothy's, but also how we can network across our industry to make that collaborative effort towards more circular solutions at scale. So we have a team of outside experts that have deep expertise in footwear and how we can develop those technical solutions, but also how we can tap into these networks of brands so that we're not just creating a solutions for Rothy's, but really for footwear at large. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to develop these collaborative solutions and not just work in silos where you see a lot of the initial circularity efforts within our industry, but think about how we can collaborate across other footwear brands to share solutions on the design side, but also on end-of-wear solutions.
Mm-hmm. And your point about collaboration is really interesting to me, because I feel like that's not something we used to really see very often in the retail industry, or this kind of knowledge sharing on the product side to make these innovations happen. And circling back to the beginning of our conversation about how your two brands approach sustainability relative to other companies, I wonder if there would be more consensus in how sustainability is, defined and practiced in retail, if there was more kind of, collaboration happening among businesses about all of these topics. So it's a roundabout way of asking the two of you, I'm wondering what the barriers are for other businesses to kind of get on board with sustainability initiatives, or what you think have been the challenges in, not allowing this to be more widespread previously. What do you think has held people back from reaching out and thinking about how to innovate? And I guess, Karla, I'll start with you and then kick it to Saskia. I think you're still on mute, Karla. Sorry.
I'm sorry. No, I was saying it's a great question. It's a complex question. So why hasn't this happened faster? Number one, I think we're just getting to know the impact, right? It's become more transparent and more clear, the impact that retail has on the planet. This is something that, we weren't talking about enough before, the amount of just pollution and amount of product that ends in landfill. And also disclosing how us as customers consume, and the fact that, we buy products and perhaps wear them 7 times before they end up in landfill. That's the data point that's out there now. So one is just, information and just the understanding and learning of the impact to the world. And then what do we do about it, right? Once we find out, well, 2 things start happening, right? The customer starts to care and ask for better. And then companies start to offer better, but offering better costs money, right? It's expensive. And that is one piece we actually haven't talked about today. Making sustainable product costs more than making product that's not sustainable. And who pays for that cost is, I think, the hard part today. Is the customer willing to pay up, 20-30% more for a recycled cashmere sweater? Or does the retailer take on that cost, right, until the customer learns more and is willing to pay up for sustainability? I think the cost of sustainability is one of the if not the number one reason why this can't go faster. And lastly, it's just the innovation factor, as you're seeing, right? We're just getting started with figuring out really if we could have more circularity, really that would solve a lot, right? Because the issue is as an industry, retail's producing new all the time, just new, and consuming so many resources to put new on the market. But if we're able to produce new from, a previous product, that would solve a lot. We just don't have solutions for that fully yet. And that takes time, research, and again, investment. And so I would say that that's the third piece that, that's kind of not a bottleneck, but it's one of the areas, right, that's preventing this from going faster.
Mm-hmm. Saskia, any other thoughts here on barriers to adoption?
Yeah, well, one point of perspective, and this is just from my point of view, I've been working in sustainability for, I guess, around 15 years. I would offer that we have come a long way, and there's been so much innovation, not necessarily in the apparel sector, but thinking about the efficiency of renewable energy and the cost of solar, for example, now becoming highly competitive with things like coal energy. That gives me a ton of optimism in that if we're focused on our innovation efforts towards these macro problems that we know exist in our industry, that we can identify solutions. So just offering that as perspective, that I think we have come a long way, and there's definitely room for optimism. In terms of barriers, I agree with Karla's comments, absolutely. And I think the other within our industry that I see is the barrier of inertia. It's much more difficult to go back and retrofit a business that's operating at a massive scale, that's more of a traditional model that isn't necessarily built with circularity or with efficiency and carbon reductions in mind. It's much more difficult to go back and change your supplier relationships to incorporate recycled materials, to work across every part of your manufacturing and outsourcing to make those practices more energy efficient and use renewable energy. So this power of inertia might be holding some of these businesses back. At the same time, kind of referencing something Karla mentioned earlier, you do see these bright spots within fast fashion, within apparel, within lots of spaces in retail where there's focus on recycled packaging, cleaner ingredients in the beauty sector. I think that's come a huge way in the past 10 years where the idea of clean beauty is now front and center. So again, pointing to the momentum that has already happened over the past few years. And really, I think the time has arrived for apparel and footwear to step up and to create more circular solutions, to think about the connectivity between circularity and carbon footprint. So excited that Rothy is part of leading that conversation.
Absolutely. And, we are coming up on the end of the time that we have together today, barely even being able to skim the surface of this. There's so much to talk about. But I guess for a final parting note for our audience, I'd love it if each of you could provide one tactical piece of advice or takeaway for the folks in our audience who work at retail, maybe don't have sustainability practices in place yet, but they want to make it part of their business. What's one thing they can do maybe in the next week or the next month to make that happen? Karla, I'll have you start, and then Saskia, you can round us out.
Depends on, of course, the team they're in, the level of influence in the company. You can start as small as, how is the office operating really? How do you operate your office? How sustainable are they paperless? How do they recycle? Like those small things actually, anybody can really contribute in terms of how the footprint of the office. And then depending on really the level of influence and product, I would really say materials is a good place to start in, because those are sourced for every season, and they can start to be sourced, even if it's a small percentage of the sourcing that goes into sustainability. You can start there, and also, if there's influence on the operational component, if distribution is owned by the company, quick things you can also do on the packaging side, and there's so much more, but I would say that those are the places where one could start.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Saskia, parting notes, where can our audience get started on making the retailers they work for more sustainable?
Yeah, I love Karla's comments. And one thing I'll add is that it's a great time to be interested in sustainability. And if you don't have a sustainability leader or a sustainability team, there are great companies that can help you from the outside. And one thing I would recommend doing is conducting what's called a materiality assessment. And that looks at what are the biggest issues or topics that you can address from your company or your brand. And that will create a roadmap of actions that you can take. So if you're a product company, it will likely do what Karla mentioned, point you in the direction of materials and material efficiency. But if you have another kind of operation that's heavily store focused, it may really focus on the retail sector. But the materiality and assessment is a great tool for brands to get a snapshot of what they're doing and what they could be doing better.
Amazing. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to share this insight with us. I wish we could have 2 or 3 hours to unpack all of what's going on in this segment and how retail can keep evolving. But for now, Karla, Saskia, thank you both so much for joining us today. And to everyone watching this afternoon, the checkout will return in late June for a discussion all about how the rise in e-commerce is reshaping frontline retail. It's going to be a great event that you won't want to miss. But for now, thank you all for choosing to spend your afternoon with Retail Brew. I'm Halie LeSavage. This has been The Checkout, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week.